Stop loss and target placements. So setting your stop loss and your target is as important as your entry point on a trade, okay? You can't enter a trade if you don't know where you will exit, okay? In profit or in loss. So a stop loss, you will exit in a loss. So why do we have to put a stop loss is to minimize our risks and to calculate risks, okay? So never, ever, ever open a trade without a stop loss. So for instance, let's say you wanted to short this. Here you see a downtrend starting to go. Okay, you see that little correction structure, breaks, and you think, okay, I'm going to sell. And you put your stop loss here, for example. Well, here you've clearly lost the trade, but you've only lost this. You haven't lost all this, because you could trade this with no stop loss. What would happen? 2 days later, you check and you're here. So you're like in the massive loss. So always use a stop loss, okay? So now the big question is, where should you put your stop loss? So first of all, your stop loss should be at a level where you think when the price will reach that level, your trade idea is no longer valid, okay? So what I mean by that is, for example, let's take a famous example of a range. Here, you want to short this. Where should you put your stop loss? Well, when will the trade be no longer valid? If the trade does something like this, it's no longer a range. It will no longer go back down, okay? So it will no longer be valid. So that's the point where it will no longer be valid. So you will put your stop loss just above the previous highs, okay? Because if it reaches there, you think, okay, my trade idea is wrong, okay? And there's no problem of being wrong. You need to admit in trading you are wrong, okay? So this, and so you'll put your stop loss here, okay? So levels where you think your trade idea is no longer valid. So now the big mistakes people do with their stop loss is, there are mainly 4 big mistakes. The first one is setting stop losses way too tight. So I see traders, for example, let's look at this. So there's uptrend plus there's some, let's say you've got multiple confluences that says you need to short this, okay? And one of your triggers is this trend line, which has been broken. So you see this break. Let's go to replay. Bam, so you're here. Let's get rid of that. Bam, you see a break. You think, okay, so forget that line, the yellow line. You see a break. Some traders will short this and a stop loss super tight, okay, here. And target, for example, down there or something. Okay, so that gives a great risk to reward ratio. So you're risking this to gain this, but the probability of it going straight down without reaching that level is really low. And plus, there's many chances of this going something like this and then go back down, okay? It can happen and the trade is still valid, okay? So you need your stop loss, you need to give the trade some air to breathe, okay? You need to give some space to the trade. So what would have happened if you had your stop loss literally right here? Okay, would have went well for the beginning and then stopped out, all right? Stopped out, and there you have a retest and you're no longer in the trade. And this will, you see, it goes back in your favor, but you've been stopped out. If you had your stop loss above the highs, okay, now if the trade goes above there, yes, of course, your trade is no longer valid, the pair won't go down. But so don't have your stop loss too tight, okay? The trading is volatile and you need to leave some space to trading, okay? Now the next common error traders make is specifically like on Instagram or so. Sometimes I see traders, they always open trades with the same amount, the same position size, okay? Same number of lots. So someone will say, I always open my trades with 1 lot. Okay, well, I would like to know how you manage your risk, because basically you don't manage your risk with position size. You manage your risk depending on the market, okay? You don't control the market. It's the market that controls everything. So let's say you're using a lot of 1 here, and you want to risk 100 euros. Well, that would make a stop loss go here, let's say. So if you go there, that would make you risk 200. So some traders will say, I'm not putting my stop loss here because that would make me risk 200. So I'm going to put here. Well, no. Simply adapt to the market. So put your stop loss in the right place and then do your position sizing. So you will probably not put one lot and probably put less because you've got a wider stop loss. But put your stop loss first and then deduce what position sizing you need. Okay, we'll see a video about position sizing, how we manage our position. Okay, so never say on each trade I risk my stop loss is at 20 pips. Okay, no, it totally depends on the trade. And now this third error most traders do is placing stops too wide. Okay, so let's say they are here shorting this and they put their stop loss above the resistance here. Okay, this is probably a bit too much. If the trade went all this way, simply close it before and you'll be able to short it up there or something. And know that the bigger your stop loss, the smaller your risk to reward is. Okay, so because your stop loss is all up here, your lot size will be much smaller. So if it goes into a gain, your gain will be much smaller. Okay, the smaller your stop loss, the bigger your position. Now the second error people do is setting a stop loss exactly on the resistance or the support. Okay, so what I mean by this is, so we've got our range, and then it starts going back down. This is the line. Okay, and where do they put their stop loss? Let's put it in black. They open their position here and put their stop loss here on the resistance and their target here, for example. Well, no, why not? Because the price could go back to resistance and form a double top, for example, and the trade will still be valid for a short, but you will get stopped out. So where do you need to put your stop loss? Above the resistance. Leave it a bit of air, a bit of gap. So even when it goes up, like imagine that's a zoom of this, all right? Here's the resistance. If you've got your stop loss here, the candle goes up, bam, you're a fox. Okay, you've been stopped out. If you give a little bit of air and got your stop loss here, the candle could even make a little wick or something, and you're not stopped out. So don't put your stop loss bang on support and resistance level. Make it lower. All right. Let's look at another example on gold, for example. That's how it trades on a wedge. On a wedge, let's say you're trading there. You could see where my stop loss is. That's the support line. So that's the support. It went all the way down to here. Don't put your stop loss on that wick because it could well just do something like this and finally make a double bottom, go back up. So in that case, put your stop loss, give it some air. So you give the trade some place to make its double bottom and still be in the trade. All right. So these are the main mistakes people make with stop losses. And so targets, you need to target a resistance or support. And in that case, you need to make the opposite of a stop loss. A stop loss, you go a bit further to give it some air. A resistance, you're not the target, sorry, you won't go further to give it some air. Because what will happen is your trade go in your favor, go really close to your target, and then go back down. All right. So you want to be conservative and go to the closest. All right. Closest point. And also concerning targets, there's a famous saying, it's don't be a dick for a tick. That means, let's say you've been shorting this, okay? You found a way to short this, and your target is here, literally here, all right? And you see the trade is here. Okay, what do? Do you wait until it gets there? Probably not. Okay, just take it. The amount of pips is not worth the risk, right? Because you want to win this by risking all of that, so it's not worth it. So don't be a dick for a tick. Simply take it. Now, if your target is here, of course, leave it because you had a reason to target these levels. All right. So targets is all about MPOs. We've seen in chart pattern videos. And yeah, so stop losses placement also depends on some specific chart patterns. So what I mean by that, let's say you've got Okay, so our range, it's just an example, okay? I use the range a lot because it's simple to understand. And let's say in the bullish side, so it's going back up, and there you see a lovely dragonfly doji. So candle closes like this, all right? And then the next candle is a bullish Maribozu, just like that. So you want to enter the trade. Where should you put your stop loss? In that case, you'll put your stop loss just under the low. So you'll put it here. That's your stop loss, and that's your entry, okay? Don't put your stop loss here, because that's too close. Leave it a little bit of gap, maybe 5 pips or something, depending on the time frame you're trading on. But yeah, so if you're using candles like this, trading off of a candle signal, you'll put your stop loss like this. What else? On a head and shoulder, okay? Head and shoulder, we will put our stop loss above the shoulder. So let's say it broke like this. You enter your trade at the break of head and shoulder, you will put your stop loss above that shoulder. So price could actually go like this and continue, and could actually make some other shape, all right? Need to leave it some space. Same for inverted head and shoulders, of course. All right, you've got this. You enter long here, put your stop loss under the shoulder. That's your MPO, and target these levels. So yeah, what else? There's on triangles, for example. Triangle breaks. So that's your triangle. Something like this. Then breaks out. You buy. Your stop loss, you put it under the recent low, okay? For it to actually reset and give it some space. Same for double top. Same for everything, really. You need to find a place where the trade will no longer be valid if it reaches this level, while also giving some space to the trade, okay? So I hope you've understood this whole video about stop losses and targets. And yeah.